Welcome to Empowering Seniors. I'm your host, Katherine Ambrose. Today we're talking about senior transitional moves and all the complexities involved. Meet Philip Vincent and Jessica Reeder with Mom's House. Philip, Jessica, thank you for joining us on the show here in Kansas.
Thank you for having us today.
Thank you for having us.
We're delighted that you traveled in from St. Louis and Kansas City to be here. So tell us a little bit about your mission as Mom's House so that we can get into the deeper complexities that people are dealing with today.
I'd be happy to. I look at our country, where we're at right now with the boomers, the seniors, we call it the silver tsunami that's coming. And what does that mean exactly? The stats show that over 10,000 people a day are turning 65. And it's them and their parents that are moving into long-term care. And what we found is that going from their forever home where they live to where they're going to be living for care, that transition is kind of a broken process. And so we explore it today with your listeners about what their options are. I think people kind of feel like they go out about this on an island and they have a lot of options that maybe they're not aware of, and so we're trying to explore some of those today.
Okay, very good. And so when people are thinking about making a big move like this, there's a lot of emotions involved. There's sometimes a lot of family members involved. If they have family, sometimes they don't have family. Tell us a little bit about what all could be brewing when a move to care is coming along.
We used to call our daughter Karen, that adult child of the senior that's moving into long-term care. And there's daughter Karen, there's daughter Judy, brother Bob, and the emotions they go back to what they were as children. So the oldest goes back to the oldest, the middle child is the middle child, and the youngest is the youngest. And it's without question, I always lovingly say that families that get along don't get along during this process because of how emotional it is. Mm-hmm. It's more than just the house. Their possessions are their identity a lot of times. It's every one of their memories. And what is the value of that is the person that has it. It's the most valuable to them, but when they go out to the market to say, hey, let's sell my things, they're usually pretty disappointed in what that turns out to be.
Plus, people are just in shock that the time is coming or the time is here that might be moving to assisted living or skilled care. Yeah. And so the emotions are just crazy. Everybody has different ideas about what to do. And hanging on to the house when someone is moving into care might not be feasible because they might need to trade that money in, trade that house in, cash out, use the money for care. Tell us what that looks like.
Yeah, a lot of times the families are shocked at the cost. The average cost in the United States is around $6,000 a month. And if you ask yourself right now, if you had to move your mother or yourself in, where does that $6,000 a month come from? Only about 5% of Americans have that money in the bank ready to go each month, and the rest usually have to sell some sort of assets. A lot of times that means the house or mom's house. And so, of course, that house that we're talking about, the house that they bought in the 70s, 80s, 50s, 60s, a long time ago, mm-hmm. is an asset only after they sell it. Right now it's a liability until they get that house sold. And that, I always say these houses are what I lovingly call grandma clean. They have a new roof when the hailstorm came in 2017 and the hot water heater's updated, but usually the kitchens and the baths and some of the more what I would call contemporary rooms that need to be updated, they were of a generation where if it wasn't broke, they didn't want to fix it. And mm-hmm. so today's buyer has a different standard, and so that complexity of trying to get top dollar. We always love that. Who doesn't want top dollar for their house? Mm-hmm. The journey to get top dollar, I think we'll talk about that a lot today, is what is the net that they're going to get to. Let's have a conversation today about the net for a family, because everyone wants top dollar, but what does it take to get top dollar out of their homes? Mm-hmm.
And so they may have gotten their new kitchen 15, 20 years ago, yeah. Or if they were going to think about replacing a kitchen right now, then you have to think, do they have the experience to make the right choices, and can they get the right buy on what the cost is going to be, so so that they're improving their value and not just wasting money.
Yeah, a lot of times families don't know what they don't know. So I'm glad that you asked that question. A lot of times people think that, pouring $20,000 into a completely new kitchen update will, net them $35,000 when the house sells, and that's just not true. That's actually one of the worst things they can possibly do. And you can go to a website, cost versus value, and compare the cost and kind of create those two columns about what it takes to improve the house before a sale and make it market ready, and what the column is if you take the things that you want out of the house and move to care and let somebody else handle that. And the emotional cost is not something that can be factored into that a lot of times, because this is something we never prepare for as adult children, and certainly something that our parents never think that they're going to go through. So that is something that can be considered as well. It's a great resource for families to really put that value onto paper, write it down, create those columns, and figure out what that bottom line is for them.
And their bottom line, managing that project, might be quite a bit different than a professional managing the project. And so a lot of times we might say, sell it as is, it's going to be faster, and you're probably going to net just as much money. Then let someone else acquire it that can invest in it correctly and have that margin. How do you explain to people that cost versus value and the net and the margin? What are some of the things that help people understand and evaluate so they can decide for themselves how they want to do it?
They usually don't believe it at the beginning. And I think sometimes when mom's house is owned outright, in their mind the basis is zero, so any dollar they spend is going to help improve the value of the house. And so when you look at the things that need to be done to the house to get it retail ready, are they prepared to make the decisions for today's buyer? And a lot of times the families go back to what they like, the type of cabinet that they like, or the type of look that they like, but is it what today's buyer wants? And what you suggested, having a professional person that knows how to do those rehabs do it, they're more in tune with what's going on in the market, and they're also able to do those things at a much lower cost. And I think that's the idea here about cost versus value. If I can do the rehab for 28 and it costs them 63, well, did they actually net any more money? And that's what Jessica said about comparing the two columns. If the two net numbers are the same or similar, and one is in 3 weeks and one is in 6 months, maybe if everything goes right, not a lot of people are going to take that other option with risk. I'll give you a good example. In St. Louis right now, it's about 6 weeks to get a permit. So you can't even start today until you get your permit, and that's before you even can start the project. And so if things go well after you clean the house out, you have the estate sale, you put it on the market, or you do the rehab and then you put it on the market, and things were selling in one day here not that long ago, but now we're back to more of a normal time. A perfect house could sell pretty quickly, but maybe 14 to 30 days to sell. You might not get your money as a family for 8 or 9 months, and that's if things go well.
A professional that can rehab quickly can get that job done, and if a family's trying to do it on their own, it can really drag out, and that's very, very costly. And I love what you said about oftentimes they think that the cost basis is zero. Oh, it's paid for. And but what it is an asset. I tell people, you're sitting on a pile of cash, you're just not doing anything with it. Sometimes we need to access that cash to pay for the care, especially if there's a chance that mom or dad might run out of money. And then you have to be very strategic. Where are we going to take the money that we do get and put it into appropriate care, and then be able to stay maybe with government benefits? And you have to do a lot of thinking about where you can go with that, and how you've got to really plan it out.
Yeah, trading equity for care is probably one of the most smart decisions a senior family can make at that time, because to your point, it's really only a matter of time before that bottom dollar, that spend down, if you will, results in the same. So getting mom or dad, your senior loved one, to care when they need it, that can improve the quality of their life so much. Just having the social and emotional interaction, having that medicine assessment, and maybe the proper nutrition and socialization, and the adult family and their children can spend the time with their loved one rather than pulling up linoleum, scraping paint, ripping out carpet, sorting polyester pants.
Well, especially if they're coming in from out of town to do that, or just
Right.
off work and taking their time to do that. That's time that you could be spending with your loved one versus working on projects, being a laborer, basically, when you could be spending that time with your family.
The weekend renovations are incredibly costly, not necessarily just in finances, but in the time spent for the family, away from their own children and their own lives, but also the time that they're spending with their parents.
Yeah, most of the caregivers have burned their paid time off. They are still married with children, and their husband wants them to come back, be like, where have you been this whole time you're trying to help your parents, and you're gone every single weekend, and at some point they just almost give up. The heirlooms leave pretty quickly. I want to be clear about that. When the families come together, getting rid of the things of value is pretty easy. There's not many of those, and then after that it's stuff. I'm not a big fan of the word, the J word or junk. I'm not a big fan of that, but stuff, let's call it stuff. And what is the stuff worth? It's not worth as much as a lot of people think, and the houses are full of so much stuff, where it's the first time when the fine china is not being passed down. With our own children, we're like, I don't want grandma's china, I don't even have a hutch to put it in. I can't put it in the dishwasher. When I have parties, we use Solo cups. I mean, right? I mean, it's different now. It's even hard to give away things.
When you think about the effort that was invested in getting the china in the first place, registering for the wedding, or buying piece by piece, and then the realization that, okay, now's the time, and you don't want my china, and that it might not have the value that you think it is. So what are some of the methods that you utilize or help people find for liquidating the extra stuff?
Absolutely. I know we have national partnerships with different gold collectors, and to really take care of some of those valuables that would be an asset to the family. But then there's also companies that holding a tag sale or holding an auction. Philip, I think you said the number is about $5,000 average, and it costs about $5,000 to put that on. So it's really it's just a time crunch at that point.
What's hard for families is that you can explain to them that math, but until they live it themselves, they'll be like, that's somebody else's average, not our average. And so when you put the sale on or the sale generates $5,000 in revenue, great. But if the sale costs you $5,000 to put it on, you're net zero. It's a hard pill to swallow. And I've met a lot of families where they thought their collection of fill in the blank was going to pay for, not everything is baseball cards or gold or something that could go up in value. A lot of things are just, they collected it, and the value of it is not what they thought it is when they go to sell it.
And that is something that you want to be careful about and make sure that you know what the value of things are, but it can be a shock. So do you have an example of the kind of the emotional side of the stuff?
Yes, most people, there's emotional stories here. I think of some of the ones where the family, there was 4 children, 3 sons and a daughter, and 2 of the sons and 1 daughter were engineers, just like Dad. And so this was a calculated family. This family had means. This family was able. And to prepare for Mom to move into senior living, they made a list of her things. And there was 2,500 things on this list. Wow. And they kind of did what I call a fantasy football draft, where they drew straws to see who got to go first. And the sister won first pick, and then they went in order. And the first pick, she picked something that wasn't Mom's diamond ring. And the boys go, whoa, aren't you going to take Mom's diamond ring with the first pick? And she goes, no, Mom already gave that to me. They were 0 for 1. They had 2,504 things to go, and there was fireworks out of the gate because Mom said in 1983 I could have this, or assumptions and the way things change. And this is a family that did it the right way, and it's super emotional. And my friend was the one son that was not an engineer, and he said by the time we got to like the 5th round, he goes, I had the 5 things I wanted, the heirlooms wise, and then the rest, it was just stuff. And so these families that do get along, it's even hard for them. And so many times in what we find is, I haven't talked to my brother since. I haven't talked to my sister since. I stopped talking to Dad when, and it's the emotion here. It's much more than just the house.
And that's so sad that becomes the legacy, because we go to all these efforts to, have a family be close, and then have it fall apart over an argument over a gun or TV trays or who knows what.
Yeah.
So
happens a lot, and the value of things is what we put on them. And so I always say for the families, if that's valuable to you, you should take that item, because the market or the world might not say it's valuable, but to you it is. So that you should keep that possession.
Mm-hmm. You're right. It's a hard pill to swallow that my stuff might not be worth what I think it is, or that somebody might not want it. that there might be some options that you can live with. The big thing is the house, though, and what to do with the house. And a lot of times people say, well, I want to leave this house to my kids, and the kids might live 400 miles away. So what does that look like?
I think that's something that's changing in this generation. This generation is beginning to embrace, they see what it was like to raise their family and know what it was like to, bring kids up and maybe struggle financially at times. And they always had that idea that they were going to leave the house to the children. And especially if there's more than one child, that can end up being a little sticky. Is it sold and divided? How's that managed? And more senior families are embracing the idea of selling the house and gifting their children. That time is what it actually equates to, by gifting them some of the finances from the sale of the house so they can use it while their family is young and while they're struggling. And that leaves everybody in the situation feeling so much better about it. It's the reward for a long life lived in the house.
Because that's kind of what the American dream was about, that you invest in a home, maybe you raise a family, you create your memories there, you're building equity to help fund your retirement. And at some point, woo, you did it. Let's cash in on all of that effort. It doesn't mean you have to hang on to it until the bitter end, to where it's actually a liability for you and it's keeping you isolated and away from the meals you could be having and the care you could be receiving. Because you can get care in your home.
Yeah.
It becomes more and more expensive as you need more time. What are some of the ways that people are staying in their home longer?
If they have money, they have a lot of options. And if they don't, just like anything in life, they don't have as many options. And so a lot of times I buy a 2-story house from someone, the bedrooms are upstairs, the laundry's on the lower level, and mom's bed is now in the living room because of the stairs. And so we call it being functionally obsolescent. That house that was perfect for the children, now the dad has passed and mom is by herself. That big 3,000 square foot 2-story house is not, but it was her house. It was mom's house. It was the house they grew up in, and it's hard, it's emotional. How do they stay there? There's care providers. Technology is going to play a big role in keeping people in their houses longer. I think no one wants to move into senior living, but it's one of those things that once they do, they realize they should have did it maybe 6 months, a year earlier, but they don't know that until they've lived there.
Yeah.
And so it's this whole thing is hard. It's emotional, and our mission at Mom's House is to give awareness to all the options families have in a time when things are going bad in threes. Mom fell down again, mom has to have a surgery. The place we picked out is $8,500 a month because we love mom. We picked the nicest one in town. The real estate agent said we have to clean this place out and rehab it to get top dollar. Where's that money going to come from? That's not even rhetorical. If you had to rehab your mom's house today, is it my affluent brother is going to kick in? Maybe. Is he also in charge of the rehab? Really hard decisions are being had, and I think when they find out that there's other options for them, both things like placement agents and VA aid and attendants and elder care attorneys that specialize in that, people like Mom's House that make the transition of the home easier, what to do with the stuff, the things. For me, every family has treasures down to trash. And we help, there's multiple buyers or users of those things. And so I just try to surround them with solutions that they need at that time.
Yeah. Well, I was thinking about what you said, that if mom's living in a house that's functionally obsolescent for her because she can no longer get up to her real bed and get up to that shower very often or go down to do laundry, so she's kind of trapped on the main floor, but she still loves her house. That's such an emotional thing. But we find a lot of times that maybe she's just having saltine cracker with butter and that's what she ate. And that making that move into the nicest place we could find means she's got nutrition. They're trying to woo into activities and do fun things and have to deal with all the stuff in it and deal with selling the house. You're not going to probably move back from California to move into the 2-story house that you grew up in.
Right, that adds stress in what is already a stressful situation at this time. And what we found is surrounding the senior family with options so that they can choose what is best for them. Really understanding, you made a point about, mom's eating butter on a saltine cracker. moving her where you get 3 warm meals a day, snacks, and you're walking around with your friends and playing bingo and having piano music played 2 nights a week. That is so much more fulfilling, and every child wants that for their parents. And the parents have such a difficult time of letting go of that dream that they've had of leaving this to their child, but that really becomes that burden, that obligation, in trying to manage this from 400 miles away.
Yeah. And sometimes it's the kids that kind of flip out a little bit, because they're like, what do you mean you want to move into that place, Mom? Because sometimes the kids panic and think, oh, that must mean you're giving up on life. And sometimes they'll say, no, I'm just giving up on cooking.
Right. No. Senior living is not at all what it used to be.
Yeah.
The communities are enriching, they're lively, they are a place you go to live.
Yes.
20 years ago, you could walk into a nursing home and you were hit with that stench of urine, and there were people slumped over and not engaging. There was not enrichment activities. And now, I can't wait until I can go. Sign me up. It's fantastic. This is your next home.
And it will continue to change with the boomers. They have a more expectancy of is that you're saying that
we have a lifestyle.
Yeah,
right?
we have lifestyle, right? And the American dream, the good thing about it is the Americans have $10 trillion in equity in their homes, so those things will be sold so they can afford really nice end-of-life care or long-term care, and it should be the best time of their life. They're back to not almost like maybe your college days. You're not doing your you have meal hall, you have socialization, you have all these things around you. It's supposed to be a fun time.
I want to circle back to something that you said, because sometimes they'll call a realtor, they'll just call a real estate agent that might not really have specialized education in this kind of transition.
Absolutely. Most houses aren't market ready. If I were to go list my house right now that I just moved into 6 months ago, they would want me to repaint and do all of these things, but at the end of the day, the amount of time, if you can get 10 or 15 or 20 more thousand by making it market ready, the cost exceeds that exponentially, the financial and emotional cost.
And the physical and mental stress.
Yes.
Especially if you're in your 70s, 80s, you're experiencing some disease process or some decline. That's the last thing you need to be doing, is trying to deal with contractors and vendors and trying to figure out how to be a house flipper all of a sudden.
When I deal with the adult children that are helping their parents, I ask them if they've done a rehab recently, like on their house, like maybe a finished basement or a new kitchen. And if they have, that always goes pretty well, because they say that we went over budget and we went over time. And I say, well, do you have that same luxury here with Mom's house to do those things? They're like, of course not. That's why you're here, to look at the house. It's the effort it takes to try to get top dollar is a lot of work.
Well, there's a lot of easier ways, and frankly, it doesn't mean you're not getting top dollar.
Yeah.
So there's a way to make it a win-win scenario, and so that's what we're trying to do, is just share with people that there are other ways to get things accomplished. There's some easy buttons out there that could net you just as well. We could talk for 3 days on this, and we've been throwing out lots of different complex ideas. So if we were going to recap and make it simple, you have a house and you have a challenge where maybe it's time to move in for care or for better lifestyle. Now what?
Jessica said it before. I thought it was the right way to say it, is that compare the 2 columns. If I make the house retail ready, what will I net? And if I sell to someone like someone that invests in property, what will I net? And if they're honest about those 2 numbers, they're usually pretty similar. And when they compare it that way, they need to make a decision that's right for their family.
Yeah.
And let them know that they do have more options than just the retail route.
Absolutely. And really, there's kind of a broad range there. There's absolutely perfect, retail ready, probably retail as is, and then there's like as is.
Yeah.
And there's easy buttons for that. So.
Absolutely. And surrounding themselves with those options really allows them to choose the best option for their family. And adding in that column at selling it as is, you can add all that time spent, the removal of stress, the adjustment and transition period that you get to spend with your loved one in that community, making that their new home, creating new memories. That's something that you can't really put a price on. And at the end of the day, that's the true value.
Awesome. Well, thank you both for being here. And thank you for tuning in. If you have questions about this topic, please reach out to us at 316-686-4500, or you can email us at empoweringseniors@kpts.org. I'm Katherine Ambrose, and I'll see you on the next Empowering Seniors.